Right-wing extremists trying to breach FBI office killed. Biden signs law expanding healthcare for veterans exposed to burn pits. Former lawyer to Jamal Khashoggi, Asim Ghafoor, released from UAE prison. U.S. gasoline prices below $4 per gallon for first time in 5 months. Taliban fighters swap arms for books as hundreds return to school. Muslim film Lamya's poem inspires youth writing workshop. From Washington, D.C., this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Hena Zuberi. Our top story tonight. On Thursday, law enforcement officers fatally shot a gunman in body armor who tried to breach an FBI office in Ohio before leading police on a chase ending in nearby farmland. Officers tried to negotiate with and take the suspect into custody with less than lethal tactics, according to Lieutenant Nathan Dennis of the Ohio State Highway Patrol. They fired at the suspect when he raised a gun, authorities said. The man was identified as Ricky Schiffer, federal law enforcement sources said. A Truth Social account bearing Schiffer's name referenced his attempt to storm an FBI office. It also encouraged others online to prepare for a revolutionary-type war, CNN reports. The user posted on Donald Trump's social media site at 9:29 a.m. Authorities said the attack took place at 9:15 a.m. Classified documents relating to nuclear weapons were among the items FBI agents sought in former President Donald Trump's Florida residence Monday, the Washington Post reports. Experts said the unusual search underscores deep concern among government officials about the types of information they thought could be found at Trump's Mar-a-Lago club. Authorities feared that the potential danger of such documents falling into the wrong hands. Trump, on his Truth Social account, called the raids un-American, unwarranted, and unnecessary. He said he approved of the immediate release of the search warrant. Trump-appointed FBI Director Chris Wray said on Thursday, unfounded attacks on the integrity of the FBI erode respect for the rule of law and are a grave disservice to the men and women who sacrifice so much to protect others. On Wednesday, President Joe Biden signed into law legislation significantly expanding healthcare benefits for veterans exposed to toxic burn pits during military service. The bipartisan promise to address Comprehensive Toxics Act is the most significant expansion of healthcare benefits and services for veterans in more than 30 years, according to the White House. Biden prioritized the legislation in part because he blames burn pits for the brain cancer that took the life of his son, Beau. The junior Biden died in 2015 of a brain tumor after serving in the Iraq War. The president pointed to the fatal effects burn pits had on his son's health. He said Beau Biden experienced headaches, numbness, dizziness before being diagnosed with cancer. Revised COVID guidance released by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Thursday lifts the requirement to quarantine if exposed to the virus. The relaxed rules now de-emphasize screening people with no symptoms and update COVID-19 protocols in schools, eliminating a test-to-stay recommendation after potential exposure. The CDC's new guidelines come after more than 2 years of pandemic-related restrictions. More than 1 million Americans have died in the pandemic. The U.S. now is recording more than 100,000 cases and nearly 500 deaths in a day on average, with the highly contagious BA.5 subvariant of Omicron spreading. Author Salman Rushdie, whose writings led to death threats from Iran in 1989, was stabbed Friday as he was about to give a lecture in Western New York. The attacker was restrained. The New York Times reports an eyewitness saying Rushdie had multiple stab wounds, but she said he appeared to be alive and was not receiving CPR. BBC reports that 10 to 15 people who were there to see the talk rushed to Rushdie's aid. He was then flown by helicopter to a local hospital. The Muslim Council of Britain is the latest organization to condemn the attack in the United States on author Salman Rushdie. Such violence is wrong and the perpetrator must be brought to justice, it says in a tweet. The incident comes right after the arrest of a person allegedly paid by the government of Iran to kill John Bolton. On Thursday, U.S. gasoline prices dipped below $4 per gallon for the first time in more than 5 months. Consumer demand remains weak due to high inflation and fears of a recession. The national average stood at $3.99 per gallon for regular gasoline. That is down 3.6% from over $4.13 a week ago, and 14.7% from $4.67 a month ago, according to the AAA. The latest price is the lowest since March the 5th. It is a 20.4% decline from the record high of over $5 per gallon. On Thursday, the highest prices for gas were recorded in Hawaii, California, and Alaska at above or very close to $5. Former lawyer of Jamal Khashoggi, Asim Ghafoor, released from UAE prison. Details after the break. Stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse. Walk a mile in my shoes.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. That's 1 in 5 daughters, sons, neighbors, and classmates who don't know where their next meal is coming from. Yet billions of pounds of good food go to waste every year. It's time we do something about it. Feeding America is a nationwide network of food banks that helps provide meals to millions of kids and families in need. Visit feedingamerica.org to help them feed even more. Together, we can solve hunger. Together, we're feeding America.
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
Assalamu alaikum! Open up your eyes.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, it's your brother Zain Beaker from South Africa. One of the first educational programs ever produced for Muslim children was the ever-popular Adam's World series. The colorful and comical Muslim puppets stole the heart of a generation. Sound Vision will be releasing brand new episodes of Adam's World with the launch of a Adam's World app. Subscribers will enjoy new Adam's World episodes as they are released, as well as all the classic episodes of Adam's World. So visit adamsworldapp.com now to learn more, subscribe, and enjoy new adventures of Adam and his friends. And let's keep helping tomorrow's Muslims today. Assalamu alaikum.
It's Adam's World. Believe me, there's a lot to see. Bismillah. Let's explore.
To stop this genocide, we need your help.
Welcome back. On Wednesday, the UAE government lifted Asim Ghafoor's prison sentence. The American civil rights lawyer was previously convicted of money laundering and sentenced to 3 years in prison. The conviction will be upheld and Ghafoor will be required to pay over $1 million. Ghafoor was a close associate of slain Saudi journalist Jamal Khashoggi and started the human rights group Democracy for the Arab World Now, or DAWN, with him. DAWN has condemned Ghafoor's conviction and says his arrest is politically motivated. U.S. Senators Mark Warner and Tim Kaine, among others, condemned the arrest. They called the Gulf nation's decision to detain Ghafoor without notice or opportunity to seek legal counsel a gross violation of his due process rights. There's no concrete evidence of Ghafoor's alleged criminal behavior, they said. Without that, they said, the UAE's claim that the arrest was conducted in coordination with the U.S. government to combat transnational crimes raises concerns. During a UN review on Thursday, U.S. officials said Washington was dedicated to battling racial discrimination amid mounting calls for reparations. Desiree Cormier-Smith, the State Department's Special Representative for Racial Equity and Justice, said, "We continue to grapple with the gap between our stated ideals and the lived realities for African Americans and other minorities." Smith was speaking before the United Nations Committee on Elimination of Racial Discrimination. She was co-heading a large U.S. delegation participating in hearings on how Washington is upholding its international obligations to fight racial discrimination. The hearings began Thursday and will continue today. They will address a raft of issues including racial profiling, police violence, and unequal access to education, housing, and a healthy environment. Researchers are monitoring a newly identified virus in China that appears to be transmitted from animals to humans. More than 36 cases have been recorded in China since the virus first was detected in late 2018. Yet it was only formally identified this week. Cases of the Langya Henipa virus were reported mostly amongst farmers in the eastern province of Shandong and Henan between December 2018 and May 2021. There have been no fatalities thus far. Experts who identified the virus said LayV is part of a genus of viruses called Henipa viruses. They are typically harbored in fruit bats, according to a report by the New Scientist. The genus includes the Hendra virus, first identified in Australia in 1994 and known to infect humans and horses, the report said. Gul Agha Jalali used to spend his nights planning how to protect his country, hoping to target an Afghan government soldier or a foreign serviceman. Now the 23-year-old Taliban fighter is studying English and has enrolled in a computer science course in the capital, Kabul. Jalali, an employee of the Ministry of Transport and Civil Aviation, says, "With the U.S. occupation over, now there's a greater need for education." Since the Taliban regained power last August, hundreds of fighters have returned to school, either on their own or pushed by their commanders. The word Taliban means students in Arabic. The movement's name stems from the religious schools in southern Afghanistan it emerged from in the 1990s. Around 12,000 people who fled violence in the northwest of Nigeria earlier this year have returned home with the help of the government. Some of those who fled also were from neighboring Niger, an official said Wednesday. Improved security prompted the return to Shimfida village in Katsina state near the Nigerian border. Yet criminal gangs known locally as bandits continue to terrorize communities in the wider region despite military operations against them, the official said. On Monday, more than 8,000 people boarded buses outside a makeshift camp at a public school in Jibia to go home to Shimfida. They fled the regions months earlier after raids by bandits, Jibia political administrator Bashir Sabiu said. Over 4,000 were being brought home to the same village from Maradi in Niger. A film about a young Syrian refugee who escapes the violence in her homeland by developing a magical relationship with the works of 13th century Persian poet Rumi has inspired a youth writing workshop. Unfold Your Myth explores themes of trauma and loss experienced by displaced young people from refugee and immigrant Muslim communities. It centers on Lamya's poem, an animated film released by Unity Productions Foundation in June last year. The project was endorsed by the educational nonprofit Islamic Schools League of America. The group hosted a writing workshop for its hundreds of members, Muslim schools teachers, administrators, parents, and students. ISLA's executive director, Shaza Khan, said the film was culturally and Islamically relevant and important for people, especially students at Islamic schools, to engage with. Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment. So stay tuned and we'll be right back after these messages.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes.
I am what hunger looks like in America. I am an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for the last day of school. Because this may be the last time I'll have lunch. Till September.
I am a single father of 2 who works 3 part-time jobs, and that's still not enough to put food on the table.
I was created by artificial intelligence from faces of the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger.
Feeding America, 200 food banks strong.
Despite the development of a COVID-19 vaccine, millions around the world will not have access. We need a vaccine that's free and available to everyone, everywhere. It's time for a people's vaccine.
Dad, they took over my bedroom. Come on, come on. Okay, Dad. 1, 2, 3. Dad! You saved me. Dad?
Are you okay?
I'm fine, dear.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need at aarp.org/caregiving.
We are Justice for All. Headquartered in the heart of downtown Chicago, Justice for All is a global humanitarian initiative dedicated to raising awareness for human rights concerns impacting vulnerable minority groups. Our diverse team of staff and volunteers, led by Imam Malik Mujahid, work tirelessly to help Justice for All achieve their goals. We promote policies that protect religious freedom, address the root causes of mass displacement, and recognize the plight of refugees and forced migrants. Together, we can continue to stand up for justice. Justice for all.
Welcome back, take 1. Welcome back. To discuss the 5th anniversary of Charlottesville's rally attack, let's go to Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid. Over to you, Imam Mujahid.
Thank you, Hena. Some serious things are happening in our country. FBI raided President Trump's home in Florida to recover some documents regarding nuclear secrets. Someone got up, posted on President Trump's social media, Truth Social, that he's gonna go, and he attacked FBI office. We couldn't penetrate, was fully armed, but was chased. And when negotiation failed, he was killed in Cincinnati, Ohio. And all of that at the 5th anniversary of Charlottesville attack by white supremacists. To discuss all of that and what is going on here is Patrick Eddington. Welcome to Muslim Network TV.
My pleasure.
Patrick Eddington is an American author, policy analyst, and national security and civil liberties at the Cato Institute, and previously served 1988 to 1996 as CIA military imagery analyst. So share with us what is happening in our country.
Yeah, unfortunately, an awful lot right now. Of course, the big breaking news this afternoon on August 12th is the fact that the search warrant that the FBI executed on former President Trump's residence in Mar-a-Lago has been unsealed. And it essentially does confirm a lot of what has been in the press the last 24 hours, specifically that the FBI recovered literally boxes and boxes of classified material, ranging from stuff at the confidential level all the way up to what's known as the top secret special compartmented information level. And the warrant indicates that among the charges that the former president may be facing are charges under the World War I era Espionage Act, which is beyond dramatic, to say the least. This is kind of, in some respects, making aspects of the Watergate scandal look a little bit tame. And unfortunately, as you noted in your intro, one of apparently a man who was one of President Trump's supporters, in fact, attempted to enter the FBI field office in Cincinnati. And as you indicated, that resulted ultimately in a chase. And as I understand it, at least something of a gun battle for a while, several miles from Cincinnati, in which that particular individual was ultimately killed. So, we have tensions that are running incredibly high in this country right now. A number of folks here in Washington, particularly on the Republican side, in my judgment, have made a series of extremely reckless statements about the FBI. I say that as someone who is not a fan of the FBI as it is currently constituted. But the plain fact of the matter is the FBI clearly had adequate probable cause to conduct the actions that they did with respect to President Trump's residence. And I think now we're really entering an entirely new phase in this drama in terms of the decisions that Attorney General Garland and his team are going to have to make with respect to how they decide to handle the president going forward. It'll be incredible, quite frankly, to see this. And of course, we still have the January 6th Select Committee in the House with its investigation going. So I think this is just going to dominate, essentially. These twin stories are now going to dominate, essentially, the headlines for the foreseeable future.
Patrick, the concern I have is while everyone is doing it by the book, by the law, but sometimes politics and the environment make certain decisions which may be right, extraordinarily critical in influencing the outcome. And this FBI president was appointed. This FBI director was appointed by President Trump himself, a fact which is not much in the headlines. But the earlier person, when he issued a statement just before Hillary Clinton and Trump election about finding some documents and all that, that changed the direction of the election. So sometime moving forward by the book may not give you the outcome which may be helpful. Here, when you look at the right-wing media, it's scary the way people are talking. What are your thoughts? I may be wrong. You have worked for the CIA, you're working in a think tank, but I'm somewhat scared being just going by the book, not realizing the significantly negative outcome which it might produce.
Well, I think the reality of the matter is, that the former president himself, Mr. Trump, has brought all of this on himself. through his own actions. And I think, one of the problems that I've always felt that we've had in this country, certainly since the Watergate era, is with respect to our political leaders, we have essentially created a two-tier system of justice. In other words, there's one system of justice for people like you and me, and seemingly a different kind of justice for people in elected or appointed office. And I think that it's that distinction essentially that is so corrosive to democracy, and why I believe, and a number of my Cato colleagues at this point also believe, that it's imperative for this particular investigation to run its course in a natural kind of way to the extent that it can. There's no question that there are almost certainly going to be some additional incidents involving some of the president's supporters going forward. But I think we need to keep in mind the fact that already the work of the January 6th Select Committee has begun to help change the narrative. Sarah Longwell is a longtime Republican, former Republican political operative. She has a podcast called The Focus Group, and she's also the publisher of The Bulwark. And I will tell you that she has done literally dozens and dozens of focus group with Trump voters, people who voted for Donald Trump both in 2016 and 2020. And she's done dozens of these focus groups ever since the 2020 election, and a number of them, since the January 6th attempted coup. And one thing that's become very clear in those focus groups is that President Trump's support among his core base has actually begun to erode significantly. Now, we'll see whether or not that changes as a result of some of these latest developments. But I think an awful lot of Trump voters were already beginning to look for an alternative, mainly because for two reasons, according to the focus group results. The first is the president's relative age. He and Joe Biden are not exactly spring chickens, so to speak, anymore. But also Trump voters really kind of feel like Trump has had his time. And they look at a candidate like Florida Governor Ron DeSantis as a younger Trump, essentially, somebody who would actually be eligible for 2 full terms, who still basically embraces the Trump agenda and so on and so forth. So, whether that dynamic now changes as a result of what's happened here with respect to this investigation, we'll just have to see. But I think we should all be very clear on one point. Violence is not the way to conduct politics in this country, period. And so that's my message, basically not only to President Trump supporters, but to folks on the far left who I know are beginning to kind of have thoughts along the lines of arming themselves and all the rest of that. I could go into that in more detail, I'm sure. But I do believe that it's important for everybody to kind of maintain a sense of perspective and to remember that if we want this country to actually function as a republic, we need people to abide by the rule of law. And the plain fact of the matter is that has to start with people at the very top of our government. And that's why I think this investigation, as well as what's happening with the January 6th Select Committee, is so incredibly important.
This is the 5th anniversary of Charlottesville, and many people at that time thought, okay, it's a wake-up call for America. Then January 6th happened. And now, although nothing of that magnitude, but the reaction to law enforcement and FBI, the way talk is, talk always is before actual violence takes place. Have we learned the lessons from Charlottesville?
Well, I think some people have probably learned some lessons from that. But, look, there's really not any question that we have a big problem in this country with respect to folks embracing, white supremacist ideologies. And essentially the most extreme of those individuals, of course, have been engaged in horrific acts like what happened in Charlottesville and elsewhere in this country. The Patriot Front action against gay activists in Idaho back in June. So there's an awful lot of this kind of stuff that's going on right now. And of course, we have hate crimes that have been perpetrated against Arab and Muslim Americans. We have hate crimes that have been perpetrated against folks of Asian heritage, particularly targeting the Chinese American community. So I think getting folks to understand that to have a functioning pluralistic republic, folks have got to understand that they need to get along, and that they need to understand, and especially fellow whites like myself, need to understand that there has to be a place for everybody in this country. And there is a place for everyone in this country. And the minute we begin to abandon that fundamental ideal, then literally the very fabric of our society is going to disintegrate. And that's simply, as far as I'm concerned, just not an option. That cannot be allowed to happen.
I mean, well said. I mean, I can tell you this, there is no country on the earth where there are people from so many countries around the world. We know languages of the world. We literally know streets of the world. That should serve as our strength in a more competitive world arena. And instead of some people getting scared of that strength which we have. But I don't know if there is any people are talking about. Do you think, let me ask you another question. Do you think some media is contributing to this polarization, or is the politician leading to the polarization?
Well, we live, very much in a different age than we did just 20 years ago, before the rise of platforms like YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, of course, Instagram, TikTok. I mean, the list just literally kind of goes on. And that's one of the big differences between now and previous eras, in that the ability to spread information, good or bad, literally at the speed of light, is pretty much at everyone's fingertips. And so that creates essentially a series of very toxic echo chambers oftentimes. That's what we see online. But, one of the things that I've learned, and maybe you've had a similar experience in your life, when I walk away from my computer and I go out into my neighborhood and I greet my neighbors when I'm out walking my dogs or whatever, when I'm doing that, I'm encountering the real America. And I think that's what's important to kind of bear in mind too here. The online world, oftentimes I've found, is inhabited by folks who, in my view, oftentimes just don't really have a life in many respects. And they wind up spending an inordinate amount of time online and an inordinate amount of time in their own little bubbles. And when you actually get out in the real world and you actually meet people face to face and you spend time with people, you begin to understand that what we see online is a distorted worldview in a lot of respects. That doesn't mean that we can ignore it. We can't. Whenever we see, hateful things online, they need to be confronted, with speech that challenges that, certainly. And we can't allow folks to engage in imminent incitements of violence. That's something that the Supreme Court dealt with in 1968 in a very famous case called Brandenburg v. Ohio. But by the same token, we also have to remember that in order for our republic to function properly under the Constitution, we've got to also respect folks' rights to speech, even speech that we might find offensive. And it's drawing that balance and making sure that people don't engage in acts of imminent violence and incitement to imminent violence. Those are the things that we need to ultimately be focused on. But I really will say that when you walk away from your computer or your device and you actually spend time with real people in the real world, you begin to understand, I think, just exactly how twisted and how completely disconnected from reality an awful lot of online life really is.
Well, thank you so much, Patrick, for your time. Truly appreciate your thoughts.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Back to you, Hena.
Thank you so much, Imam Mujahid. That's all from our Washington studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Assalamu alaikum and good night.